you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This is another of our popular Listener's Choice interviews, which we're playing over the weekend. We've chosen the most popular interviews for you to select the Listener's Choice winner. If you're not sure how the Listener's Choice competition works, have a look at horsechats.com/choice for the rules and the leaderboard. Today's chat's been brought to you by International Horse College. We have a mission to improve the welfare of horses throughout the world through the safe education of riders, handlers and trainers, and that's what these chats are all about. Registered Training Organisation 31352. Now today's chat's with Mark Langley. Mark's an inspirational horseman who considers how he feels when he's working with horses. He works with the horse, he guides it, involves it in the educational process, and prioritises the horse feeling better about the education he gives it. Mark gives an insight into training which puts the horse first, and he's helped many people and horses in his unique and perceptive training which has come from the experience of starting and training thousands of horses, many of which have been highly sensitive wild horses. His knowledge of horse psychology is fascinating, and how he deals with problems and bad behaviours is something we'll be talking about in our chat today. How are you, Mark?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Glenys. Yes,
good. You've been pretty busy, Mark. I think you're in the process of getting ready for a clinic, and I know you're off to Equitana next week. So, yeah, in between, lucky you found time for us to have this call. So thanks for the time.
Oh, no worries at all. No, it's a pleasure.
Good. Now, Mark, we normally start people off with a favourite quote, and I know you've got a couple for us that you use often in your clinics. What would you like to talk to people about? What are the main ones?
Well, one of the favourite quotes that I tend to be quoting a lot to people, and it's sort of a quote that I don't think it actually originally came from the back of my brain. It was words that I read years ago. But the quote that sort of means the most, and I tell people the most, is if you push a horse away, they'll soon know where you want them. And, I'm constantly addressing that with people in their horsemanship. And the other one that sort of, helps people, I guess, take the emphasis off themselves and just, think that we're, here to help our horses. We're just here to help. So I say that quite a lot as well. We're just here to help, not to train.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I like the way that you communicate with them, and you communicate with horses when the horses are ready to listen. So when they're listening to you, you can educate them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, my whole training revolves around trying to get people to understand their horses and know when the horse is ready to take on information. And, sometimes you're spending a whole half a clinic with somebody getting their horse ready to take on information and be connected to that person so it can accept that person.
Mm-hmm. You've started thousands of horses, but I want you to think of even before you were starting and working with any wild horses, your early memories. Have you got a particular memory that you might have thought, learn something, make it a learning memory?
Oh, in my younger days, I was, on the back of a horse young. I did the pony club and things like that, and we were involved, like my father was running a long-distance horse trekking business, so we were always trekking horses, mapping out trails, doing a lot of pack horsing. But, just the memories that I have, it wasn't until I started working on a property, working with a stockman, that I really sort of started to see the advantage in wanting and to know and learn more about how to get our horses softer and more connected. Because his stockman, though he sort of had a lot of old techniques, he had some nice horses, and it really made a lot of sense to me, and it just sort of gave me a bit of inspiration, I guess, to sort of want to do a little bit more and better hone my horsemanship skills, because, you sort of, when you're young, you sort of think you're going okay, but you realise there's a lot to learn.
Yeah. So, Mark, from that, when you're working with the stockman, and now you've got a career with horses, you're training, you're helping people, you're doing clinics. Was it like a gradual progression? I'd like to hear a little bit more about the wild horses that you're working with and the starting them right from scratch. How old were the horses? Tell us a little bit about the circumstances that you're in then.
Yeah, well, when I first, I put an ad in the paper when I came back from America with sort of, I guess, big ideas to try and, well, not big ideas. I just came back wanting to do a better job.
Yep.
And learn more about horses. And so I put an ad in the paper that I was taking on starters and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so living in a rural area, we've got a lot of people who breed stock horses, but they just push them and they come in at about sort of 3 or 4 years old and start them. But some Brumbies that I started from up north, they were hand-selected ones, and they were sort of up to 8-year-old, and they were all, like half of them were stallions that were just been freshly castrated. And they were sort of probably the older, sort of wilder horses that I've done in the sense of being proper wild and proper big and strong horses.
Mm-hmm.
All the others that came through were just, some of them were just as seemed just as difficult. But these Brumbies weren't as difficult as a lot of the other bred ones that I'd had. But yeah, I'd take them from scratch and start them and get them going. Now, those horses were destined to go overseas, probably something I wouldn't be involved in so much anymore. But
okay. Well, tell us about some particular, I'm trying to think your philosophy, where it started from, where you really, really got the idea of listening to the horse and working with the horse.
When I started taking on horses,
Yep.
I must admit, I was just drawing on ideas and methods that I've learnt. And some methods I sort of didn't like and I wanted to change because it didn't feel right.
Yep.
But I didn't have enough, I guess, real experience to sort of question, because the people of those methods that I got them off, they were sort of, I guess, been around a long time and they sort of had quite a following in horsemanship and things like that. And,
yes.
But there was things I didn't sort of agree with, and a lady lent me a book, and it was a Mark Rashid book, and this was about probably in the early days when I was taken on horses. That was in my mid-20s, I guess. And he questioned a lot of the things that were around, and those questions were sort of light bulbs for me because they were the questions that were floating in my mind, only half answered and half unanswered.
Okay, yes.
And from there I realised, and because of the wild horses that I was training, I got a lot of Arabs. Like in the old days I was getting a lot of 4 and 5 year old unhandled Arabs, and as you know, sort of the highly strung horses, you don't want to make too many mistakes. You want to make sure things are going right and the horses trust you. And
yes,
and that sort of highlighted things in training which that weren't right for the horses.
Mm-hmm.
And from then, my philosophy basically started to believe in myself and my instinct, and
yes.
I just relied a lot more on instinct when I was training, opposed to, trying to follow an idea or something that someone else has got. And I relied more on my instinct because the words that I read really helped me believe in the things that myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it gave me a way of thinking that took me years to really understand it and properly understand it. And but from there, I started to sort of evolve. Every horse I broke in, I was evolving a little bit more. Whereas probably prior to that, I was just using sort of techniques and hoping that they were going to go okay.
Do you think the book almost gave you permission to say these old ways, maybe they're not right, maybe I can explore a little bit, and from there you've started to explore?
Oh, well, the thing was it was questioning new ways as well. So it was sort of, it was questioning the old ways and the new ways, because some of the stuff that's new is still got a lot of, it made me question the some of the things that I was doing, and also some of the new things that I'd learned, especially when I was overseas in America and that sort of thing.
Okay. What's some of the things that you used to do that now you just, you just shake your head at anyone that would even talk about it? Yeah.
As I said before, the quote that sort of I seem to say a lot, and that was basically the quote that I got out of this book, but it was just a philosophy, but it made so much sense to me. It was, if you push a horse away, you'll soon know where you want them.
Mm-hmm.
They'll soon know where you want them.
Yep.
So what that meant to me was how often do we push our horses away? And it started to make me realise, even in my own training, when I wanted to motivate a horse, it was very easy to put energy into them and move them away from that energy. But when you're working with really raw, highly strung horses, all that is in horse communication is go away.
Yep.
And also the other side of things is so even when I was sort of getting a horse to pay a bit of attention in a round yard, I started just to draw its thoughts to me, opposed to sort of have a lesson where I move its feet away to get its focus to come back. I started really trying hard in all my techniques, and it really sort of it's just showed me how many areas we do it and how damaging it could be. But it wasn't until years later that I really saw how damaging it actually is, because doing my own horses, you're progressing each day and you're just seeing the end result. And whereas later when I started doing clinics and teaching people, I saw the result of what years of certain training did, as in I'd see lots of horses at a clinic with the same problems.
Yes. Okay. And these are man-made problems?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of them were man-made problems. And but yeah, so it was that philosophy that really was the first one that got me thinking about the things I was already uncomfortable with, especially when I was starting to work a few nervous horses. And it made me believe in myself and just go, well, how can I figure out ways to make operating a horse, like make a horse feel better operating around me, not just the connection that they have by when they come up and sniff and feel okay with you and that comfort that you give them by that, but when they actually start to operate and move their feet around us. And, it really made me try hard to sort of look at them and get them to sort of feel a bit better about what they were doing. But I guess also training and re-educating, I started feeling sorry for horses. That's when I started to love them a lot more, because I'd get the damaged horses, because the better I got with tough horses and stuff, sometimes you'd get the re-education horses more and the tough ones. And you'd see the fear in them, and that was man-made fear and stuff, and it made me really feel sorry for them and what they had to go through before they come to me.
Okay. So you said earlier that sometimes you work with someone and it might be halfway through the clinic before the horse is really listening and wants to connect with the person. What sort of body language are you looking for? What reactions? How do you know that they're ready to listen?
The horses, you got, as I said earlier, it wasn't until I started doing clinics that I saw the damage of education.
Yep.
And how people have damaged horses. So you got the fear damage from getting treated really hard, but then you got the damage of people trying to do the right thing, but they've ended up flooding their horses and pushed them away and not allowed their horses to search. So you got the shutdown horses, for instance, which look very obedient but very mechanical, very sort of disconnected, and they're not quite in balance because they're doing the task, they're doing it with their thoughts a little bit elsewhere, and they're carrying a certain amount of tension. So in those horses, and they're probably the harder ones to get to come out of the hole and look around again and say, hey, can you help me? But those horses, say, for instance, you're going to be looking at them just starting to loosen up in their ears, because those horses tend to have tight ears where they sort of hold them in a certain angle and they don't. And the one thing I look for is them to reach out and sniff out to people, as in, they loosen the jaw and they sniff out like a young horse would sniff out to a person that's like a nervous horse would to sniff of someone's hand. So some of those very obedient horses, and you'll see their eye softens, and a lot of times you get that square-shaped eye in a horse that the front of their eye, will round a little bit. Their eye will just generally soften. Some of the wrinkles in their face will start to disappear. Their breathing, they may have a letdown, which is when a horse lets down and you see the licking and chewing and that sort of thing. But sometimes that's not really from a connection. It may be just because the person stepped away and gave the horse space to sort of feel that it wasn't under pressure or threat. So sometimes a letdown can be associated with just, you stepped away, thank God.
Yes.
And so it's not a good thing. But what I'm looking for is if a horse lets down after it's sniffed a person.
Yes.
Or it's, done something like that. So it's like you see the connection cause a release in that horse and the horse relaxes. And so that's sort of one thing I look for. The other thing I look for is the angle of their thoughts. So you look at their eyes and you can tell that they're sort of thinking elsewhere and they've got not a soft eye on you. So and the angle of their jaw and everything like that. So if your horse is just walking past you, you can see if it's sort of seeking refuge elsewhere or looking at you softly with that inside eye.
Yep.
And, generally that inside eye will have a nice soft ear that's paying attention to you. But so if you think the angle of their thoughts it's almost looking like they're looking somewhere else a bit, that's obviously a clear indicator that they're not connected and they need to be.
So when you start a clinic and you might have a group of riders, group of horses, but they're unknown, you haven't seen them before. What's a common behaviour that you see that you would prefer not to see? You sort of talked a little bit about it, but, I just wondered if there was a common...
Well, one of the common behaviours is the things that niggle me, I suppose. If it was going to be like if you're saying if it's a thing that niggles me a little bit, it's when the horse does something and the person snaps. They snap a little bit. And I can even blame myself for being like that in the past. But now it's my priority to teach to people to understand why the horse did something, because the people blame the horse for doing something, and they snap at it in a way, whether it's throw a wave up a rope or do something. Yet the person themselves were quite disconnected with their horse when their horse did something. And they take it personally and blame the horse for doing something wrong. That irritates me a little bit. And I don't sort of show people that I'm irritated by it. I just try and encourage them to look at another way of dealing with it. But I do see it happening a lot. The poor horse is always the one to blame for everything. If it's pushy, it's disrespectful. So I guess the blame for and really the blame is just lack of understanding.
If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com. Has there been a particular, and I'm thinking like a case study, a particular horse that you've worked with, or even a particular person that you've taught that they might have come to you with a certain philosophy, and then through the work that you've done with that particular person, they've been able to change their philosophy and go on and do well with horses?
Yeah, well, do well with the troubled horse. I'll sort of there's a few case scenarios, but there's a couple of ladies actually, separate horses, separate ladies, but they're ones I've just helped recently actually. I'll probably use them because the question in the sense of they were doing it one way and they had troubles and they changed their approach, and then their horse is starting to change. So I get lots of people sometimes I get people that have on the last resort. So I'm going to give you there's one person, but they were already on the path of finding another way before they met me. They were already trying to seek.
Okay.
So I had someone come to a clinic a while ago and she was training in horsemanship and things like that, and she was trying to help a horse. So she bought a quiet horse. It was actually more shut down than quiet, and it had been sort of hammered in an arena. And so she's got this horse that starts attacking people and starts to sort of just either not go or just rear up and panic when it wants to, all these things started coming out of the, all these worms started coming out of the woodwork sort of thing.
Yep.
Now, all the help she got, and she started to train in a certain way, but it wasn't helping a horse because it required to put more pressure on when the horse was troubled.
Yes.
So I guess where I've sort of come along and helped her, I said, well, listen, how about you stop moving your horse away and just let it feel good about being operated first. So we'll find little things that it can do that it can survive without having to feel troubled about it. And part of that would have been just getting that horse just to sort of connect to her and just realise that she's a good place. So something I do with everyone is just make them imagine that they're a tree opposed to a sort of an alpha horse or something like that. And being a tree, it's something that the horse can always feel comfortable around, but a tree is very strong. so because I think sometimes when people get help with horsemanship, they become externally strong, as in they get, when a horse pushes them, they can use their arms or their rope or their flag or something and move a horse away. But internally they're still a little bit need strengthening.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it would have been fixing that in her and saying, it's okay just to stand here calm and not worry about all the little things he does. Just let him relax a little bit and feel okay. But then when we started to operate him, it was highly important that if he got cranky when she had him just like gently lunging out, instead of doing something about it, I'd just say, don't worry about it, just make him feel good, maybe draw him back and let him follow you and let him stand for a second. So every time he gets a hard eye like he wants to be aggressive, curve that thought with something else, like distract that thought with a task that might bring him back to make him feel better.
Okay.
So instead of sort of getting on him all the time when he got cranky or aggressive or pushy or things like that, we tried to sort of make him feel okay and just show him that she's still strong and she's not to be pushed over, but it's not an argument between them who's not an alpha horse versus an alpha horse. She's not trying to push him down the pecking order. And then what's happened is now when she visits him in the paddock, he comes up to her and he sniffs her and he follows her around and stuff like that. And he actually generally starting to like her.
Yep.
And though we've still been working a lot, like hard on getting that riding happening, but what's starting to happen now, she can take him out. He feels good about going forward now and he's casting his thoughts out and he's carrying her along and getting confident. And every time she deals with him, there's a little less argument in the areas where there was a lot of argument.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really just trying to work out, one, stop pushing him away like an alpha horse. I really had to encourage her to not think like that because, when they get pushed down the pecking order, it doesn't make, they just feel troubled about that anyway.
Yeah. Thinking about horses like this and doing clinics and moving away from certain methods, have you had people challenge you and just say, no, that's not the right way to do it, this is the right way, and they go back to some of the old ways that you'd learned earlier on?
Oh, people sometimes go away and if they've only spent a day or two with me and they don't really understand, then they'll go back to what's easy.
Okay.
Sometimes it's easy not to think.
Mm.
So when people come to a clinic, one thing I'd like to think I'm getting better at, and people have sort of said, no, you're good at explaining it, is I will explain things in detail and I might have 5 different ways of explaining the same thing. So when people are listening, they actually can see and understand why you would do it one way and not the other and how your horse feels about it and things like that. So hopefully by the end of 2 days they can sort of grasp the concept. But because it is difficult and you've got to think harder, so even when you apply feel, it's not just about, this will do. You have to be more particular, you have to watch more, you have to take in more information. So it can be difficult, but the end result is a horse that feels better and is much nicer to work around. But it requires you to become a horse person, not just a method follower.
Yes.
But that's my motive is to teach people to be a horse person. And at the clinic, people are like, they'll probably challenge me after the clinic and talk about me. I'm not sure, but at a clinic, I've not been challenged too much. I have had people question, well, why wouldn't you just do this? And then I'll say, well, I wouldn't do it because of this. And you can see your horse thinking here and see that and see the tension rise there. And I give them a scenario and explain it and I show them through their horse and they go, oh, yeah, okay, I can see that now. I can understand that. So if I was to give them an idea without explaining why, then I think they'd challenge me a lot more. But I'm very careful on explaining why I'm doing everything all the time.
Yep.
I do this because of this. And then they sort of answer their question before they ask the question, before they need to ask it.
Yep. If you now had, a handful of horses to get started, 5-year-old, Arabian bred, not handled, how would you go about it? What would you start doing? And what sort of exercises would you start?
Oh, listen.
You're going to tell me you've got one at home. Yeah, got one right in the yard now.
No. Well, I was going to say one thing I'd do, I'd take a lot more time than I used to.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be employed anymore by anyone breaking in a lot of horses because I'd be like, no, he's going to take too long. mind you, once upon a time, I was still doing a kind way, but I only had a certain amount of horses on the go all the time, and my situation was better to get them through on a shorter period.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, if I had a wild horse standing in front of me, I'd probably wait a bit longer, and I'd just stand and not do as much around it. So even though I thought in the early days I was helping them, I was making things happen too quickly, whereas I would stand and encourage things to happen through them finding me a little bit more instead of me constantly managing the environment just to make things happen. So if I had a wild horse in a round yard, for instance, instead of creating a stimulant to get it to sort of focus, I'd probably just, and even in the old days, I'd just wander around them, but I'd probably just stand there and watch it for longer and just watch it and just till I can really understand it, and then I'd start to make some decisions on what I'm going to do next.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think even though I sort of stood in a round yard, even in the early days, and just waited till that horse just settled, and I think I'd watch a bit more about, where which eye they think through the most, which eye they do this, and how often they pay attention to me, how often, if they don't at all, and I'd probably let them just bring their attention to me without me doing much at all.
Yep.
And then after that, once I do get them sort of hold it up, and I would spend more time on leading and following a feel softly and correctly, all those things that sort of help the reins and stuff like that, I'd probably spend more time on. So then when I get up there, my tools are so much better, and the horse feels like the tools are its friend opposed to a trap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of the things where I made things happen, I think I'd sort of allow the horse to, every part of everything that I'm teaching, I would actually allow the horse to loosen and soften in that part and understand it before I move to the next part.
Yeah. And I think what you said there, it sort of backs up your philosophy, just watching it, guiding and involving it, but when the horse is ready to be guided and involved. Yeah. I've got a question too. You said at one stage, which eye the horse is watching you with the most. Do they watch, and I'm thinking, the horses coming in that haven't been handled, haven't had a lot to do with people as such. Which eye is it more? Is it more the left? Is it more the right? I've heard it's more the left, and I haven't, when I was sort of working with unbroken horses, I didn't have the thoughts of even thinking about that. But I've heard with people doing a bit of research now that it is more the left. But is it more the left? Is it more the right? What do you think?
Yeah, listen, it's an interesting one. Yeah, I'd probably say, predominantly you might get more left-handed people than, right-handed people than left-handed people.
Yep.
Predominantly you might get some more horses that'll soften on one eye, and that probably would be the left eye.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how many horses that I've come across that I've had to walk up on the right eye.
Okay.
And I could only connect with them on the right eye. Mm-hmm. So I would never go in expecting, but you might say that more of them are going to look at you a little bit better with the left eye.
Yep.
In saying that though, when they talk about imbalance in horses, I just because there's a focus eye, it's interesting. You can be fooled if you believe it. As in, you might have an eye that the horse looks at you with, and then you watch it when it runs around. It's our other eye is the one that it focuses on all the things it wants to go. Like you get these sort of real Stanley-like horses that, they're running through their right eye all the time, as in when they got their head up looking for other horses and what's looking around, they're really looking for their right eye. So if you've got that horse going to the left, it's it's not even hardly got any of its secondary focus on you. It's just sort of counterbent to the right, looking, scaling the whole place with its right eye.
Mm-hmm.
When you turn the horse around the other direction, it just looks at you softly with its right eye. But when you get close to it, it may only allow you on the left eye.
Mm.
So, it might be scaling you out, like I call it scaling the joint. You're looking around, it sort of scales the joint with its right eye, but once it gets a bit sort of nervous and it gets a bit more, I'm happy to once that nervousness comes down and it's happy to connect a little bit, maybe it only lets you on one side of its body, because I have seen horses sort of that you think that's the focus eye, so you go, oh, that's the eye that I'm going to be on.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be fooled, yeah.
It's softer. That's an interesting. And good that you've done the time and the work to notice that. It just goes to show that, that the thousands, not just thousands of horses, people talk about thousands of hours, but you spend 100 hours with a horse, well, that's 100,000 hours. That's quite, I don't know if that's quite the maths, but, quite a lot of time, but not just time with horses, but time thinking about what you're doing with the horses.
Yeah, well, once upon a time, even before it was about trying to help every single horse and give them a better life, one of the other priorities for me was safety. Because we lived in a shed for little tiny shed.
You're such a horse
for 6
person.
or 7 years, and
such a horse person, Mark. That's what horse people do, live in sheds.
Yeah, and we milled our timber to build a house and all that, and it was so no fancy arenas. It was all the horses that get done. I had a little yard and another yard, and then we ride out into the bush. And so I had to watch them carefully to work out how safe I was going to be and what's going to go wrong. So, and that was all part of it too, because after a few train wrecks, you don't want to get in them all the time.
No, that's right. Tell us about a horse that you haven't kept going with, that you've just thought, for the amount of time and effort, this horse is not going to keep me safe. Is there one in particular, any particular behaviour that you're not looking forward to, you wouldn't be looking forward to working with?
All the years that I trained horses, I pretty well did every one that was sent to me. In the early days, there was a horse that got sent to me with, and this was, this was my sort of first, second or third batch of horses, when I first started. There was one in the batch that was really, really wild, and it was only a kid's pony size, but it was wild, and it was sort of, it would have took months to sort of get it quiet, and I would have been scared it would have hurt a kid.
Okay.
Now because the horses, they're all sort of only worth a certain amount of money, they had to be, like, it wasn't my decision inevitably that makes the decision. It was, you've got 5 horses. This one here is going to take a lot of time to work, and it's really, really, really wild. So the owner would sort of obviously make a decision on that one. That's one particular horse I remember that I feel bad because I feel in one sense I failed him but it was a decision that was, one of those ones that you had to make, I guess, for the client, because otherwise I'd just have a paddock full of horses that I'd just take forever to train, and I'd have too many that they'd just sit there. And
it's hard when you've got to balance that financial viability, isn't it?
And because it was a business back then, so it was one that I must admit. And there was another one which was a mare that I insisted that it had a vet check. After I said, I'm not going to do any more work with this horse. It was an Arab mare who was very, had a lot of anger in her, very sour-looking type mare, and more particular than all the horses that I've been working with. And because she sort of stood out to me, I said to the owner, listen, I've only done sort of 2 weeks, which equates to 10 lessons. I've done 10 lessons with her. I said, yes, I've made some improvement, but she's really, I haven't taken that edge off her. And I'm not willing to spend any more of your money until a vet checks her. And I believe she did have some problems, ovaries type problems. But yeah, it was one of those decisions that I thought, it's, unless I have a second opinion on this, I'm not willing to work the horse, because I if I could just keep working it, and I can't help it, then it's not worth working until someone else can sort of work out how to fix it if there's some other problem.
Yes, because training's one thing, but if the horse is in pain physically, it's a bit different.
Yeah. But over the years, I basically got sent every horse. There was one that I broke to harness, which I didn't have enough time to break it to saddle, because there was a fellow wanted it for harness, and it was more of it was one of my early horses that really sort of taught me about what a horse can do if it all goes wrong. But I put it in a sled and things like that. But the amount of time I had before the fella wanted it, and the way it saw me under saddle was going to take some time. So that mare, I decided just to finish her off in a sled, and she's another mare I probably, whether or not she would have ever made a saddle horse, but it's going to be a bit of a long road to get her going there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Out of all the things, you've been working with horses for a long, long time, ever since very early. What makes you the proudest?
Oh, one of my proud situations, one time when I felt really proud, it was recently a lady who I was working with, and it's more so now the people I work with and the horses that I manage to help, I think, that makes me the proudest.
Yep.
2 instances where there was 2 horses sent to me, and the mother was getting ready for pony camp out at Narrabri.
Yep.
And she had a little sort of half shut down pony that wouldn't move forward, and another thoroughbred which was very, very hollow and stiff and tight and sort of nervous, and when it cantered really choppy and it was stiff and worried. So I took those horses for a couple of weeks for the lady, and she rang me back. I talked to her a while later, and she said, I said, how'd Pony Club go? She goes, the little Appaloosa pony, about 10 people wanted to buy it after the Pony Club pony camp, and he did, her son did cantered the jumps and everything and went really good. And she said, my other older son on the big thoroughbred won champion boy rider.
Oh, isn't that great?
And that made me so proud, because it was like, it wasn't like, competition is not one of the things that drive me, but to have 2 kids have their horses come over and then, do so well at Pony Club, it made me proud of the horses and proud that the kids actually, and I hope for those kids, because I showed them what I did and, gave them ideas. Hopefully that carried through in their mind. And another time was a troubled pony that got really frightened of people at a lady. She wasn't going to compete on it, but she it made me proud, because not the ribbon she won. It wasn't the ribbon. It was what the judge said. She took it, and I didn't think she was going to go to any dressage competitions for a while, because that pony was had some issues. But we helped the pony start to understand her and start to work softly for her, though the road was still wiggly. One day her husband said, she only took it, I said, just take it to the shows and just be there, be a tree, just let it be calm around you, and then take it home so it knows that people are there to help, not just to go and compete and just be a tree for it. And then one day she was at the competition just doing what I told her to do, and her husband said, geez, he looks really calm. They just called one of the classes he can do. Why don't you do it? And she goes, I'll try it. And she went in it, and she ended up with reserve champion.
Oh, wow.
The little comp. But the judge said that was the quietest horse out there going around there. That was the calmest horse. Yeah. And to me, it was because she said it was the calmest horse, so that pony was right happy underneath her and happy with her. Yep. And that made me really proud, that was. It was one of those proud moments that you sort of, because I don't have proud moments for myself. It's more so
what you can do.
Horses that go and,
Mark, what have you got coming up at the moment? I know you're busy. You've got a clinic, and then you've got Equitana. What have you got longer term than that? Yeah, listen, long term, we're changing our structure a little bit. Like, I've stopped taking horses possibly about 6 months ago now, because I was getting snowed under. I wouldn't have any time for it. Now we're a family now. I've got 2 young kids at school, and I'd just come home and I'd be getting stressed because I had horses and clients' horses that were building up that I had to finish, and it was just becoming too much weight for me. Yes. So now I just do clinics. So I've got a 3-day clinic coming up this weekend, and that's why people are arriving now at the moment at home here. And then after that we drive down to Melbourne for the Equitana, which is the first Equitana that I've been to, and so I've just got two demonstrations down there on the Thursday and Friday, and then we all drive back. The family drive back on the Sunday, and then I drive back down to Sydney to go to Perth for. I did a talk over there and a little demonstration in Perth last year, and the people who came have managed to organise a few 4-day clinics over there because they really liked it. So they put together some clinics. So I'm going to go to Perth for about 8 or 9 days for clinics over there. Okay. And then back, and that's us for the year. But next year we've got a busy calendar of clinics, and I go to Germany once a year.
mainly clinics next year, but we're downsizing our breeding because I've just got a pile of young horses that I've got to start or educate and that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to downsize our breeding because I just want to come home, and if I do have horses to ride, I want to just have ones that I'm not always training and starting and handling to sell, or I want just something that I'm going to just enjoy for a bit.
For sure. Mark, if people in between your busy schedule, if they'd like to contact you, what's the best way?
They contact us via, well, Jenny runs the whole business side of things, and it's info@equineability.com.au.
Mm-hmm.
That's our email. Or we have the phone which links to Jenny, which is our business number, which people contact Jenny on, and it's 0417 200 411.
Yep.
And if they just want to go onto the website, they can just Google either Mark Langley or Equineability. Our business name is Equineability.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just Google either one, you'll get our website, and all the details are on there. And just also recently, which is a new thing and something I was a bit nervous about doing, or sort of actually I didn't want to do it, was we've offered a subscription which is just like a fly on the wall sort of thing that follows clinics and lessons, and some lessons that I do with horses here.
Okay.
To just offer the people who can't come to clinics a bit of support, and people who've been to clinics a bit of support. It's very hard though, because I don't want the people just to follow a method. I want them to just take ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also available now for people to sort of use.
Good. And Mark, just before we go, and those details too will be on horsechats.com/Mark Langley, or just go to horsechats.com and search for Mark Langley or search for Mark, you'll find that. But before we go, just summarise your philosophy with horses.
My philosophy is we go in as a helper.
Mm-hmm.
And if we take them from the herd, we have to replace them with the herd, and that's us, and that's the way they feel around us and the connection they have with us. And when we operate them, we have to operate them in a way that allows them to search and makes decisions for themselves, and so they can feel good about what they're doing, and then our ideas can become their ideas, so them enjoying connecting to our ideas.
Yep, good. Mark, we'd love to have you back again. I hope to talk to you a little bit more about that and how we can get you back and, have some more of your precious time in between your clinics and everything else you're doing. So hopefully we'll see you again back here very soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.